Visiting a national park is a wonderful way to spend a weekend. Being a family-friendly pastime that anyone can enjoy, millions of people visit national parks around the country every year. Most people leave the park and recommend the trip to their friends, but some never get the chance. While national parks are inviting people of all ages to enjoy a haven of nature, they can also be a deadly labyrinth. These parks can easily cover millions of miles of untamed woods, becoming a seemingly endless maze in which you may never find your way out. This is a 1 in a billion chance, of course, but that still leaves some who will fall victim. So today, we'll be taking a look at 3 unlucky people who walked into the park and seemed to vanish into thin air, never to be found again. Sandra Johnson Hughes disappearance. Sandra Johnson Hughes disappeared into the Sierra National Forest, located on the western slope of Central Sierra Nevada in Central California. She was last seen entering the Johnson Meadows on July 4, 2020. An extensive search ensued following her disappearance, but only more mystery was uncovered. Hughes was 54 years old when she moved from Hawaii to California. A month before her disappearance, she began planning her camping trip as a way to enjoy nature and escape the confines of her home during everything that's currently happening. Before her trip, she was extensively trained in managing the wilderness as she trained to be a park ranger in college, making her disappearance all the more curious. Her family reported that they had last heard from her on June 26. The search began on July 5 after Hughes' belongings were found in peculiar disarray. Her niece posted a call for help on Facebook encouraging others to help search for her aunt, stating that her campsite was found with her belongings and was quite disheveled. Things were thrown about all over, almost as if her car and belongings had been emptied out carelessly. Furthermore, her niece claimed that she would never leave her campsite a mess. Even a piece of litter on the ground would bother her. The Madera County Sheriff's Office then followed suit and openly asked the public to aid in the search for Sandra Hughes. Hughes was described as someone who liked to move around a lot. She had no children and was twice divorced, giving her the ability to uproot at a whim and live largely without restraint. There was a peculiar encounter on July 4th. It was reported that a group of hikers came in contact with Hughes. They claimed that she was walking barefoot, with a sizable bruise on her face. The hikers were rightfully concerned and offered her help, to which she declined. They insisted on providing some kind of medical assistance, but she again rejected their offer and continued on her path. Her family described her as someone who was very organized, making this behavior highly unusual and disturbing. On the 5th of July, there were more mysterious circumstances. Hughes' car was found lying in a creek that leads into Juquito Lake. Authorities on the scene theorized that the vehicle was traveling at less than 20 miles per hour when it crashed into a tree and rolled into the ravine. This is extremely unusual for a crash. At such a low speed, it is hard to imagine why Hughes would have crashed head first into a tree. Typically, at this speed, the driver has great control over the vehicle. This finding led the search to intensify its efforts. Nearly a dozen separate sheriff's departments joined the effort, assisted by rescue dogs, volunteers, and helicopters from the California Air National Guard to locate Hughes. Together they combed the forest working day and night to find any sign of Sandra Hughes. None was found. The last sighting to reportedly see Sandra were 2 hunters passing through the woods near the Portuguese Overlook. The men claimed they saw her leaning against a tree along Road 5S01 near Bisor Road. At the time, they did not recognize her, and it was only upon returning from their trip that they recognized her from a missing person flyer. The hunters remarked that she did not appear distressed or in need of assistance. However, upon seeing her picture from the missing persons flyer, they said that she was visibly thinner. We can only hope she returns home safely. Stuart Isaac disappearance. Stuart Isaac disappeared in Yellowstone National Park on September 24, 2010. Stuart Isaac was a 48-year-old family man, native of the Republic of Palau in the Pacific. On September 6, 2010, he set out to enjoy a cross-country trip to Yellowstone National Park. He drove approximately 32 hours from his Burtonsville, Maryland home and began his solo camping. The last contact he made with his family was a simple note that he left, informing them of his planned trip. Isaac spent several weeks away from home, and it was not until September 24th that he was determined to be missing. We know that, on September 26th, Isaac's black 2009 Lexus was parked at Craig Pass without a single hiking trail nearby. His car was found by the National Park Service during a routine patrol of the area. The car, which sported a vanity license plate reading Belek, was unlocked with the keys inside it. Whether Isaac had been the one to park the car here, or if he was even in the vehicle at this time, is entirely unknown. Craig Pass, where the vehicle was located, is a rather odd place for any car to be parked. Standing at an awe-inspiring elevation of 8,262 feet, it serves as a mountain pass on the Continental Divide. Located roughly 8 miles east of the Old Faithful Geyser, it is rather far from any moderately trafficked route on the Yellowstone National Park's Grand Loop Road. This unusual finding is what prompted local authorities to determine that Isaac was indeed missing. Upon finding Isaac's vehicle, a large-scale search ensued immediately. Authorities determined that Isaac could have been lost for a total of 20 days when the car was finally located. Considering that no spotting of him had been reported since September 6th, the National Park Service enlisted the surrounding sheriff's departments and the California Air National Guard to assist in the search. Together, along with rescue dogs, volunteers, and helicopters, they combed through the nearby areas to find any evidence of Isaac. Not a sign was found. The last reported contact by Isaac was to a former high school classmate, Matsu Evans. Records show that Evans spoke with Stewart for 2 hours on September 24th, almost immediately before his disappearance. This only added mystery and confusion to the investigation. The call was made at 6:30 p.m., according to her time zone in Guam, but this would have been roughly 3:30 a.m. in Isaac's time zone. Evans remarked that during their phone call, she felt something was off. I was kind of surprised to hear from him because he seldom made calls. We text each other and we email. Now I know that he's missing. Why would he call me 2 days before something happened? However, during the call he did not allude to being in any serious distress and simply informed her that he was on his way to Yellowstone for a relaxing cross-country trip. What made the encounter even more curious to Evans was that she never knew Isaac to be an outdoorsman of any sort. Did not seem to be experienced in hiking or even to be an occasional purveyor of nature trails. Due to the unique circumstances of Isaac's disappearance, many have speculated that he had planned to disappear on the trip. The mysterious final phone call to a loved one and a note left for his family aligns with the typical procedures for someone contemplating to end their life. Let's hope he is found one day. Bruce Pike disappearance. Bruce Pike disappeared in Yellowstone National Park on August 2, 2006. The disappearance of Bruce Pike is perhaps the most mysterious disappearance. Very little is known of Pike, with seldom information released to the public regarding who he was and how he went missing. Yellowstone is one of the most famous and most frequently visited national parks in the continental United States. It receives an estimated 4 million visitors annually, and that number only seems to increase with every passing year. Every single day there is likely to be about 11,000 people in the park at any given time. Holding its spot at number 1, it is the world's first national park and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. With the enormous landscape stretching over 2 million acres, it is common for tourists to find themselves lost or to wander off their original path. However, these people are almost always found within a few days or even hours, as the park is so heavily trafficked. Only 3 people have ever been lost to be never found in Yellowstone National Park. Bruce Pike just happened to be one of them. What we know was Pike was last seen at the Indian Creek campground on August 2, 2006. His car was found to be abandoned nearby. His story was not covered by the media, and there is no public record any family members asking for help to find him. Despite the seeming lack of interest, mysteriously enough, the Texas authorities are participating in an ongoing investigation of his disappearance. He has never been seen or heard of since. But what do you make of these 3 disappearances? They say a picture speaks 1,000 words, and some photographs will absolutely go down in history. So today we will be taking a look at 3 famous photos and their stories. Jeannie Wiley, the feral child Susan Wiley, better known by her pseudonym Jeannie, is an American child who is a victim of abuse so severe that she has been labeled a feral child. Her name is commonly spoken in academic circles, with her traumatizing life often being reduced to a case study amongst psychologists and linguists. The horrors faced by Jeannie in her childhood haunted her and will continue to do so for the rest of her life. The hardship in Jeannie's life began before her father's neglect. She experienced medical complications from birth, making her late to walk, amongst other abnormalities, prompting her father to question her mental development. Though by 11 months, Jeannie had relatively typical development in good health with no indicators of mental delays. Her mum offered questionable accounts regarding her childhood, suggesting Jeannie did not care for physical affection, did not babble as a baby, and resisted solid food. Sometimes her mother recalled contradictory facts, saying that Jeannie had spoken single words and then later commenting that she never spoke at all. By 14 months old, Jeannie became ill, suffering with pneumonitis. At this time, the pediatrician opened the discussion into the possibility of brain dysfunction. When Jeannie was 20 months old, her father's mother's life was taken in a hit and run. The probationary sentence given to the truck driver angered Jeannie's father, pushing him into a delusional rage. He relocated the family into his deceased mother's home, isolating them and hiding Jeannie. From just 20 months old, Jeannie's life of trauma and isolation began. Her dad kept her locked in a room, strapped to a child's toilet by the arms and legs for 13 hours per day, then tied into a sleeping bag in the crib at night. She was bound into a harness her mother had made, which acted like a straitjacket, drastically limiting her movement. Should Jeannie make a noise, her father would hit her with a plank, growl at her, or scratch her. Jeannie quickly learned to live in silence. Her parents and brother would sleep in the living room, where her father lay with a shotgun, ready should one of them aim to help Jeannie. Their father barely allowed them to speak to one another, never mind the daughter he was treating so horrifically. As a result, Jeannie never learned to speak. Jeannie's life was confined to the dark, small room. No visitors entered the house, and her father had cut the family off from most friends and extended family. Jeannie's mother, who was nearly entirely blind, was beaten and threatened when she attempted to contact friends, her parents, or the police. Meanwhile, neighbors were entirely unaware that Jeannie existed. Change came when Jeannie was 13. Jeannie's mother tried to seek disability benefits to aid her with her deteriorating eyesight, though entered a social services office by mistake, with Jeannie in tow. The social worker, upon seeing Jeannie, could see something was not right, and was mortified upon hearing she was 13, having guessed she was 6. The police arrived and Jeannie became a ward of the court. She was taken to the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. It did not take long for people to realize the extent of Jeannie's suffering. Jeannie stood at 4 foot, 6 inches tall and weighed just 59 pounds. Her list of medical issues was extensive. Her physical development was poor and her mental age was compared to that of a 13-month-old. Aspects of her health, such as her vision, appeared okay at first, though it was later revealed that she was unable to focus her eyes further than the dimensions of the room she had lived in. Jeannie became key to the press, to linguists and psychologists. Now the whereabouts of Jeannie is unknown to the masses to prevent more harm from coming to the innocent girl who was thrown from the hands of her abuser into the world of academic observation. Many people recognize the photo of Jeannie Susan Wiley that was released from the press in 1970. Geraldine Largay. Many people love to hike. It is a popular yet dangerous hobby, as was proved by the case of Geraldine Largay. Geraldine had completed many hiking trails back at home, but this one proved to be a little different. Geraldine, or Jerry, went missing whilst hiking in the Appalachian Trail back in 2013, and when she was found 2 years later, her journal entries after getting lost. Lage was a keen hiker and was prepared for her hike of the Appalachian Trail. She embarked upon a through hike, making her way along the 2,168 miles while her husband met her periodically to pass on some supplies and encouragement. On the day she went missing, her husband George had driven to the Route 27 crossing 22 miles away from the shelter his wife was last seen at. The only clue that could help the police in their search for the missing hiker was a photograph that had been taken on the morning she disappeared. After having found Jerry, a series of heart-wrenching texts were found, beginning with one she tried to send at 11 a.m. that day saying, "In some trouble, got off trail to go BR, now lost. Can you call AMC to see if a trail maintainer can help me? Somewhere north of Woods Road." Though the lack of service meant her cry for help was never received, over the course of 90 minutes she attempted to resend her plea 10 times. Another message failed to send which read, "Lost since yesterday. Off trail 3 or 4 miles. Call police for what to do please." Jerry tried to send this at 4:18 p.m. By now her husband grew frightened and an official search was underway. From aircraft to park rangers to fire departments. The search was not short of men and was thorough, but not quite thorough enough. In 2015, a forester uncovered what was a potential body of Jerry at a campsite. The forester commented, "I saw a flattened tent with a green backpack outside of it and a human skull with what I believed to be a sleeping bag around it. I was 99% certain that this was Jerry Largues." Her notebook was found with diary entries dated until August 18, though the accuracy of this date has been questioned. It was entitled, "George, please read," and she was found with a note begging, "When you find my body, please call my husband George and my daughter Carrie." Her message continued, ending with, "Please find it in your heart to mail the contents of this bag to one of them." The acceptance of death in such a terrifying situation is tragic and daunting to say the least, and many hikers will remember seeing the photo of Geraldine Largues, who was along the Appalachian Trail, a haunting reminder as to how dangerous hiking truly can be. The discovery and alleged curse of King Tutankhamun. Many of us remember studying the pharaohs at school, though while we were learning about the pyramids, we were not necessarily told about the curse of the pharaohs. For centuries, whispers have spread of a curse being placed upon anyone who disturbs an ancient Egyptian mummy, particularly that of a pharaoh. The curse will not look more favorably upon archaeologists than thieves, and many believe these curses will spread ill luck, disease, and even fatalities. People have searched for more scientific explanations whenever mysterious events have occurred following the moving of tombs, suggesting causes such as bacteria or radiation causing harm. Though there are plenty of people out there who investigate the culture and believe these causes are a cultural magic, not a matter of science. One tomb has come up more often than others when discussing curses, however, and that is Tutankhamun's. Howard Carter and his team opened the tomb in 1923, acting as a catalyst to modern research into Egyptology. It did not take long for the coincidences, or rather the effects of the curse, to begin piling up. James Henry Breasted worked with Carter shortly following the opening of the tomb. Breasted recalls Carter sending a messenger to his house on an errand when the messenger reported hearing what was described as a faint, almost human cry. He turned to see a cobra in the birdcage and, as any Egyptologist would know, the cobra represents the Egyptian monarchy. Carter's canary had lost its life within the mouth of the cobra. Could it have been symbolic of the Egyptian monarchy? Was Lord Carnarvon, the man who funded the excavation of the pharaoh's tomb. The Lord was bitten by a mosquito and caught the bite whilst shaving. The wound became infected and he lost his life. The cause was blood poisoning. The autopsy of Tutankhamun revealed a healed lesion in his left cheek, and some suggested the location of Lord Carnarvon's wound may have aligned, though his burial 6 months prior made this difficult to confirm. Others theorized the Lord had come into contact with toxic fungi and his loss of life was simply oddly timed but was nothing to do with the disturbance of the pharaoh's tomb. A friend of Carter's, Bruce Ingram, received a paperweight made from a mummified hand with a scarab bracelet. Not long after receiving this gift, Ingram's house burned down and was then flooded after being rebuilt. Remained skeptical of the curse. After all, many others who visited the tomb lived long, happy lives. Though Carter did report in his diary sightings of a jackal, much like Anubis, the guardian of the afterlife. Could these curses be entirely that? Is there a scientific explanation, or are these tragedies merely coincidental? Some stories will live in the minds of many for years, and in many instances we will be reminded of these tragic events from simply a photograph. But what do you make of these 3 historical photos and the stories they hold? Legends, folktales, and lore are some of the most pervasive elements of British culture, especially what has been preserved and passed down through generations. The beautiful sprawling landscape conceals its fair share of secrets, and an untold number of mysteries have arisen to the forefront as a result. Many of these mysteries and legends have yet to be solved, be they ancient folktales or more modern events. So today, we will be looking at 3 cases of enduring British mysteries and the stories behind how they came to be. Bigfoot spotted in Cornwall. One of the most enduring mysteries and folktales of all time seems to be that of Bigfoot. The elusive creature has been claimed to be seen in locales from America to Europe, with grainy photographs, dubious artifacts, and word of mouth as the only proof that he was ever there at all. However, a witness from Cornwall claims to have significantly more solid proof because he says that he came face to face with the humanoid Sasquatch 2 decades ago. Although many people have dedicated their lives to searching for clues proving that Bigfoot, also known in the Highlands as Sasquatch, does in fact have a hidden lair somewhere in the rural expanse of the continent, most evidence that has come to light has been debunked. But some of the most compelling evidence that has surfaced thus far has been the testimony of an impartial witness converted into a Bigfoot believer, after he experienced a shocking run-in with the creature. The anonymous spotter, who was located in the St. Morgan area near Newquay at the time of the encounter, spoke to a representative of British Wildman Sightings map. He said that he was in shock by the encounter, which had happened when he was a young man almost 20 years ago, and once he heard about the existence of societies dedicated to collecting evidence of Bigfoot, he was not sure whether to write in with his experience or not. However, he knew that the people involved with the hunt for Bigfoot would want to know about his experience, as he felt sure that he had indeed seen Bigfoot, Wildman, Sasquatch, or whatever else they felt inclined to call it in the flesh. The man was a young man at the time, working outside of St. Morgan in the woods. He was charged with making cages out of wood for pheasant hunts and was perplexed by the strange noises which sounded like something knocking on wood, that frequently echoed around him as he worked. When he asked his boss about the noises, his boss wrote them off as something called woodwoos. Later, he was working in a densely wooded area adjacent to a field at the base of a hill with his boss and other employees. He remembered hearing a wood knock that sounded rather close, and then another one much closer, but as nobody else was bothered, he carried on. However, once his fellow workers left and he was alone in the woods, things began to heat up. I waited on the edge of the forest and I could hear rustling in the bushes, he recounted. I looked but I couldn't see anything, and then I guess my eyes adjusted and began to focus because I saw a face. This face was looking back at me and there were clicks and whistles everywhere. I don't know why I still wasn't sure what it was. I walked forward to try and have a better view. Then it stood up. I don't know why, but it was not fully grown. It was a male about 6 foot 5 inches tall. It was kind of a copper color and it looked right at me. He then said that it quickly dashed off and was out of sight as soon as he heard the man's colleagues returning in their car. The man was understandably left shaken and shocked and told his coworkers about his encounter, to which one man replied that the sightings were quite common and that the creatures were known as woodwoos in the region. Just leave them be, the man said. And while no concrete evidence of Bigfoot has been discovered, sightings of this nature are taken for granted in the countryside and attributed to woodwoos, meaning that there is definitely something mysterious out there hidden in the woods. The Buckinghamshire vampire. The mysterious case of the Buckinghamshire vampire is an ancient one that has been passed down in English law for centuries, having originated in the 12th century. As the story goes, a Buckingham man who passed away in 1192 was laid to rest on the eve of Ascension Day. However, the story claims that he rose from his grave the following night and visited his wife while she slept, laying on her until his weight almost suffocated her. After this frightening experience happened 2 nights in a row, the terrified wife asked some trusted friends to stay with her and watch her deceased husband so that they could repel him from her. Sure enough, the vampire returned for the 3rd night in a row, but he was driven away due to the efforts of his wife's friends who had remained awake for her protection. Leaving his former home, he visited the homes of his brothers who lived nearby and attacked them instead. The brothers then had to stay awake and drive the vampire away just like the man's wife. The story then says that the vampire quickly turned into a town problem as he spent the nighttime hours plaguing anyone who slept and forcing vigils to be held in order to protect themselves from the vampire. Soon he even began venturing from his grave during the daylight, and the town finally decided to consult priests and theologians in order to determine what could be done to rid themselves of this terrifying plague. At their supplication, the townspeople were astonished to learn that they were not the only ones who had been experiencing some encounters. In fact, multiple nearby English towns had also complained of a vampire. As a solution, the bishop wrote an absolution for the man and ordered the townspeople to open his grave and place it in his chest so that he could be absolved of whatever was from his final resting place. Once this was done, it was said that the vampire of Buckinghamshire never left his grave again and rested there peacefully for eternity. Although the term vampire did not yet exist in the time of the original story, as it was passed down orally throughout the centuries, many people believed that the man was indeed a vampire. However, since the event happened so long ago, the facts of the case will remain an enduring mystery. Howden Moor crash. One of the more enduring modern-day British mysteries is the case of the Howden Moor crash, which claims that a UFO crashed into the Howden Moors in the Peak District, South Yorkshire, after dark on March 24, 1997, and was subsequently covered up by the government. Emergency personnel received multiple calls alerting them to a possible aircraft crash in the area, after witnesses saw a low-flying object disappear over the horizon and then heard a loud explosion and saw a large flash. Because so many people saw the incident, police suspected that the crash was fairly large and dispatched an incredible number of people to perform search and rescue operations in the area. The RAF even joined in the search, after first assuring police that none of their aircraft had been in the area and none were missing. Despite such a large-scale and thorough search, they never found a single thing, and calls kept coming in from people who came forward saying that they had certainly seen the aircraft and had also seen military jets in the area. Eventually, the search had to be called off as it was apparent that there was nothing to be found, but police continued to ponder the case, considering everything from a drug plane drop-off to a phantom airplane, while still never managing to find out what had really caused the crash. However, in the absence of an official answer, the public came to their own conclusions. A large portion of individuals believed that a UFO had entered the atmosphere and was being pursued by fighter jets belonging to the RAF. During the search and rescue, the RAF was quick to join and impose a 10-mile exclusion zone around the reservoir in the area, and some think that one of the fighter jets crashed into it during the chase. And the RAF was eager to keep people out while they covered their tracks. Because so many people reported seeing fighter jets in the area, which was a region where it was illegal to break the sound barrier, combined with the RAF's insistence that none of their planes were there at the time, many people have been led to assume that something untoward was going on, even if they do not particularly ascribe to the UFO theory. The more reasonable explanation is that the RAF was engaging in a covert operation, which that they were not willing to come clean about in the wake of such an expensive search as rescue mission. Although the Ministry of Defense has since come forward with their own explanations of the night, in an attempt to demystify the occasion, not everyone is willing to accept their version of things and still regard the case as an elusive mystery to be solved. But what do you make of these 3 stories? Are they myths, or could this be what really happened? One of the most fascinating elements of our planet for many people is something that no longer roams the earth. Dinosaurs. The age of the dinos is a truly fascinating part of our planet's history, and the evidence that we have of those beasts serves only to tantalize the imaginations of those who want conclusive answers as to what dinosaurs really looked like, what they ate, and how they interacted with their prehistoric world. Although we are a long way from answering all of these questions, the field of paleontology has gone a long way towards finding out new and exciting information about the dinosaurs of old. So today, We will be diving into 3 recent scientific dinosaur discoveries and what we can learn from them. Cambridge scientists bioengineer little dinosaurs. Advancing technologies have huge implications for science and our knowledge and understanding of the world around us. One of these advances makes our world feel almost as though it were straight out of a science fiction novel. New biotechnology startup DinoDNA has teamed up with Cambridge scientists to attempt to bioengineer actual miniature dinosaurs. After securing an initial investment of over $34 million, the scientists at DinoDNA revealed their master plan. They will be attempting to recreate tiny versions of the prehistoric animals by piecing together existing fragments of DNA taken from fossilized skeletons. Shockingly, bringing back dinosaurs from the dead is not a novel concept. In fact, it was popularized in the scientific community by a book written by paleontologist Jack Horner in 2009, in which he suggested that the DNA of a chicken could be used as a base upon which old dinosaur DNA could be applied and used to recreate those long-gone creatures. It seems that this is actually a viable option given the advanced technology that scientists have access to today, although it is uncertain whether it is the route that DinoDNA will be taking. The chief scientific officer of the DinoDNA project, Dr. Ohm, has said that it might sound like science fiction, but genetic engineering technology has advanced so rapidly that we are quite confident our first dinosaurs will walk the earth this summer. But he elaborated that safety is, of course, paramount, and so we have chosen a species that is small and friendly. Scientists working on the project have said that they hope that the creatures will be able to roam within the bounds of enclosed spaces where the public can interact with them. They chose to recreate a Compsognathus that is on the smaller side and appears to have been relatively harmless, in the hopes that it will be friendly and could even be intelligent enough to master tasks such as collecting litter in parks or stray balls at a sporting event. Although Compsognathus would only grow to be the size of a turkey, it remains to be seen whether it will truly be harmless walking around amongst society. Mainly, scientists wish to use the Frankenstein dino for research as a representation of its much larger family members and fellow extinct Earth dwellers. In the meantime, should such a far-fetched sounding experiment actually succeed, researchers are planning to implement strict rules and regulations to eliminate the possibility of a rogue dinosaur escape and the potential for an invasive, genetically modified species to be let loose on Earth's modern-day world. However, the operation has been undertaken under the utmost secrecy for security and information privacy concerns. Thus, it is likely that there are several agencies that would love to get their hands on a real-life tiny dinosaur. As such, the location of the research facility that will be attempting to recreate prehistoric life, as well as the actual processes that will be undertaken in order to go from hundreds of millions of years old dinosaur DNA fragments to an actual living, breathing dinosaur, are being kept tightly under wraps. So for the time being, we must wait and see whether or not the future of the world includes dinosaurs walking on the earth once again. Prehistoric maternity ward discovered. We are constantly learning new things about the way ancient dinosaurs lived and how they interacted with the earth in ways that are both similar to and different from the animals of today. Most recently, scientists and paleontologists discovered that many species of dinosaurs were not migratory and instead lived permanently year-round in the Arctic. This is interesting as it means that they must have been incredibly hardy and well-adapted to have been able to survive the intense temperatures and unwelcoming conditions of these prehistoric areas previously thought uninhabitable. This discovery was made by a team of researchers from Florida State University and the University of Alaska Fairbanks, who uncovered a large amount of the ancient remains of bones and teeth of prehistoric infant dinosaurs in what is now modern-day Alaska. This prehistoric nursery of sorts was incredibly significant because, up to this point, there had been an understanding among those who studied dinosaurs that they were cold-blooded and therefore unable to withstand the cold winter climate of the northern Arctic. However, such a prolific amount of fossilized evidence of young dinosaurs means that the species that they came from likely lived there year-round in a more permanent capacity. What's more, the infant fossils did not just come from a single species. It seems that there were at least 7 species that made the unwelcoming Arctic their home, including Tyrannosaurus, Hadrosaurids, and Triceratops. But how does the presence of baby dinosaurs indicate a non-migrating species? The scientists working on the project say that because the incubation times of dinosaur eggs could be as long as 6 months and no shorter than 3 months, there simply would not have been enough time to lay, incubate, hatch, and then make a significant seasonal migration with a young infant in tow. The researchers who made this discovery did so after an impressively tedious process. They had to take a perilous 4-day journey to the Arctic coast of northern Alaska and then collect their samples by rappelling down the faces of cliffs and gently scraping through sediment with dental tools to collect the fossils. They made this pilgrimage to Alaska every August for 10 years, slowly collecting their fossils and evidence before they released their findings to the public with enough data to back up their claims. Now, all those researchers need to do is figure out exactly how these species weathered the intense temperatures. Although some speculate that they hibernated underground and dug burrows, significant research is still required for an answer to these questions. Iridium confirms an asteroid wiped out the dinosaurs. Scientists studying this 200 kilometers crater believe that it could have been caused by an 11 kilometers asteroid plummeting to Earth, vaporizing rock, causing a decades-long winter and wiping out over 75% of the era's dinosaur population. This iridium discovery appears to be one of the final pieces in a puzzle that scientists have been trying to put together for decades. Iridium is usually brought to Earth in asteroids, and it is incredibly rare to find it naturally occurring in the Earth's crust. Scientists believe that the asteroid of Chicxulub crater contained large amounts of iridium which were vaporized into Earth's atmosphere on impact, thus accounting for the high iridium content found in the KPG extinction sedimentary boundary. In the case of the crater, the iridium layer was so thick that scientists were able to 20 years after the impact, offering further proof that the crater was the original source of the Earth-altering impact. Additionally, there is archaeological evidence of massive tsunamis in the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean during this frame time, as though some unspeakably massive collision caused waves radiating miles from the point of contact. Researchers also suggest that the depletion of sulfur in the sediment layer surrounding the impact zone indicates that the sulfur was thrown into the atmosphere by the force of the blast and further contributed to the long winter and acid rain that we know accompanied the KPG extinction. Iridium is not the only astrological element that is prevalent in the KPG sites. There are several other elements usually only found in asteroids that occur in incredibly large amounts that are reciprocated through KPG sediment cores taken from 52 sites around the world. Sean Gulick, who was one of the scientists present for the expedition to the Chicxulub crater, said that the discovery of the other rare elements both at the site of the impact and the concurrent sediment layers throughout the world have all but confirmed that the extinction of the dinosaurs was caused by an asteroid impact in the Gulf of Mexico. We are now at the level of coincidence that geologically does not happen without causation, he said. It puts to bed any doubts that the iridium anomaly is not related to the Chicxulub crater. The results of these conclusions have also been independently validated, proving that scientists are definitely moving in the right direction. What do you make of these discoveries? The world around us is remarkable. Everywhere you look there are extraordinary revelations to uncover. From archaeological mysteries surrounding the ancient Aztecs to the various enigmas of the cosmos, our existence brings with it an endless pursuit of knowledge. So today we'll be taking a look at 3 amazing recent discoveries. Archaeologists will have to bury an Aztec tunnel in order to protect it. Of all anterior civilizations, the Aztecs are perhaps the most enigmatic and intriguing. The majority of the knowledge we possess of what their culture and lives were like comes from excavations and scriptures archaeologists have found in temples and classical Aztec towns. As such, it may seem odd for archaeologists to want to bury a tunnel that could lead to discoveries untold. Archaeologists from Mexico's Institute of Anthropology and History will be burying an ancient tunnel they found back in 2019 when they excavated Tenochtitlan, one of the Aztec Empire's most famous city-states. The tunnel in question is part of the Albarradón de Ecatepec system and is a deeply intricate tunnel that was created and constantly altered and rebuilt by countless other civilizations that resided in the area before and after the Aztecs. This tunnel was changed and made to reflect the culture living above it at the time. The archaeologists have a handful of reasons as to why they need to bury the tunnel, including but not limited to the fact the tunnel is part of Tenochtitlan's defensive system against flooding. This system is extremely complex and powerful, and includes a myriad of tunnels, dams, canals, and anti-flood protective measures. When the tunnel was first discovered in 2019, the Mexican government, travel agencies, and archaeological institutes hoped to turn the site into an open exhibition for tourists to witness with their own eyes. This tunnel is truly a feat of human history. Traces of both Aztec and Spanish historical designs, innovations, and cultural influences exist in it. But the sinister side of archaeology includes dark archaeologists and marauders, who might enter the tunnels illegally and take what is not theirs in order to sell them to museums or underground collectors. Burying the tunnel assures its safety from such individuals. The tunnel is stable but was critically harmed during the 1600s by an onslaught of floods that overwhelmed what is now Mexico City. These floods caused the Spaniards occupying the area to overhaul all the flood tunnels. The tunnel has various glyphs and sigils on its walls, from different eras and cultures. Many of these are thought to be pre-Hispanic symbols that could bring more insight into Aztec culture. As of now, 11 such symbols were discovered. Among these were the images of raindrops, birds of prey, and what appears to be a military shield. These glyphs might have been embedded into these ancient walls by not only the Aztecs, but quite possibly by the autochthonous populations of nearby Mesoamerican cities of Chiconautla and Ecatepec, who were thought to have helped the Aztecs build the tunnel. Despite the tunnel's old age, its Spanish-based architecture is clear to see when it comes to the overall structure. At some point, the Spaniards left their own mark on the landmark. It is even possible that this tunnel was built during the very early colonial period of Mesoamerica, as evidenced by the Spanish-influenced arches and features alongside the traditional Aztec and Mesoamerican glyphs and flooding systems. The archaeologists involved promised to adhere to special masonry that is meant to protect the tunnel's cultural elements from harm during its burial, and that it would be buried in a way that would make re-excavation easier in the future. Largest megaripples on Earth from dinosaur asteroid found under Louisiana is known as a land of urban myths and mysterious happenings. But underneath Louisiana lies the largest ever megaripples ever found on Earth. These megaripples are 16 meters in length, which is equivalent to a 5-story building. They stretch 5,000 feet in width. The megaripples, the Lat Lake, and its near vicinity. Their geology implies that they formed directly after the extinction of the dinosaurs when the meteor that took them out hit the surface of our green planet. Data analysis revealed that these megaripples date back to the Cretaceous period of the Earth over 65 million years ago. Back then, the entire area had still been underwater. As for how the ripples formed, when the Chicxulub asteroid that destroyed the dinosaurs crashed into the Yucatan Peninsula, it caused a huge tsunami that formed the megaripples on the seafloor. Gary Kinsland, a professor at the University of Louisiana, stated, "The occurrence of ripples of that size means something very big had to disturb the water column. This is just further evidence that the Chicxulub impact ended the Cretaceous period." Took 3D seismic surveys of the lake's area and found the megaripples on the lake floor. The surveys were done using surface detectors that capture sound waves that are reflected by the underground rocks and their layers. It is these sound waves that allow scientists to map out the specific geology of the bottom of the lake. Kinsland knew after seeing the ripples in the data that they had to have been caused by the Chicxulub meteor. "I immediately saw the ripples, and I immediately knew the direction the water would have had to have been traveling in to create them. And I knew that if you go backwards from that, you run right in Chicxulub." As a result, he could use the data to figure out the exact direction that the Chicxulub tsunami went and determined it was facing south-southeast, pointing back to the Chicxulub crater, solidifying his belief that the meteorite and megaripples are connected occurrences. The wavelength of the ripples was estimated to have been about 1,968 feet. Alongside their width and amplitude, this makes them the largest megaripples on Earth found thus far, dating back 65 or 66 million years. These megaripples were trapped, so to speak, underwater after the tsunami washed across the entire Gulf of Mexico and Louisiana, and were so deeply hidden under the waves that when violent storms overwhelmed the Gulf of Mexico, The ripples were safe and undisturbed for millions of years. As time passed, the ripples were covered by shale, a sedimentary type of rock that protected the megaripples from being disturbed until we found them. Shale is composed of primarily mud and clay with fragments of various minerals. The shale formed throughout a period of 5 million years after the catastrophe, or about the shale itself was then covered by other kinds of sediments that built up through the epochs. Discovery of a dying supermassive black hole via a 3,000-year-long light echo. Black holes are unquestionably the most feared and unknown cosmic object in our known universe. Furthermore, there is at least one hiding in almost every single galaxy. Sometimes referred to as the dark hearts of galaxies, black holes are a subject of fascination for many. At the center of our very own Milky Way, there is thought to lie a supermassive black hole potentially with a mass worth billions of times that of our Sun. The scientific term used for these supermassive black holes is AGN, known as active galactic nuclei. These AGNs give out tons of radiation in a similar way to how radio waves or X-rays produce radiation. They are also the reason why you can sometimes visibly see jets of ionized gases in cosmic photographs. And as all things in the universe someday, they do have a life that eventually expires. After a considerable amount of time, an AGM will shut down. But the reasoning for this or the process of how it occurs remains unknown to astronomers. Koei Ishikawa, a top researcher at Tohoku University in Sendai, Japan, has come across new information that might give us more insight into these massive black holes. Ishikawa observed the galaxy of ARP 187 and found what he and his colleagues believed to be a dying AGN. When searching the galaxy, they found the telltale signs of twin jets of ionized gases showing up on their photographs, but were unable to find any radio waves coming from ARP 187. All active nuclei produce radio waves. A secondary look into the galaxy using NASA's NuSTAR, short for Nuclear Spectroscopic Telescope, was supposed to show the number of X-rays coming from the galaxy, but despite the advanced technology, there was little to no X-ray traces found. The data is currently inconclusive, but the majority of scientists believe that while Ishikawa was incorrect that the AGN was still alive, they do believe it was there, but that it died off thousands of years ago, leaving only a large AGN jet trace behind, a light echo of what once was. If there is one amazing thing about humanity, it is our persistence to never stop learning. Endlessly we try to reach new lengths, to find out more about the universe, to discover our place in the bigger picture, and to find our purpose. No matter what may come in the future, we can rest assured that we will never stop trying to expand our knowledge and understanding. But what do you make of these recent discoveries? New discoveries and advancements in our understanding of the world around us are not always linear. Sometimes we uncover something new that means we must alter what we thought to be new. Sometimes we discover something that will fill in a blank on our timeline. The world is always changing, giving us more to research about our past, our present, and our future here on Earth. So today, we will be taking a look at 3 fascinating discoveries that have changed or added to our expectations. 3,700-year-old Babylonian stone tablet gets translated and changes history. We often hear tales of archaeological breakthroughs and ancient artifacts changing our historical, sociological, and cultural understanding of societies, both modern and ancient. But it is much rarer for our understanding of maths to shift so significantly. But an ancient stone tablet donning the name Plimpton 322 or P322 has done just that. P322 was first uncovered in the early 20th century by archaeologist, antiquities dealer, and Indiana Jones inspiration Edgar Banks. The tablet was discovered in modern-day southern Iraq and is now being held at Columbia University. The tablet displays 4 columns and 15 rows of numbers inscribed in cuneiform, a writing system used and developed by the ancient Sumerians of Mesopotamia. Picked up in the 1940s when the cuneiform writing was recognized as numbers that reflect the Pythagoras theorem, a mathematical theory that most teenagers are familiar with. Teens all over the world have memorized this theory verbatim. The square of the hypotenuse equals the sum of the square of the 2 other sides. The discovery and use of this theorem in Babylonian times has sparked a great deal of discussion lasting for decades. Mathematician Dr. Daniel Mansfield and his research team from the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia were studying P322 after seeing an image of it whilst designing maths courses. Mansfield said, "I'm sure it's trig. I'm sure it's trig. But how?" The endless rules of trigonometry have haunted many people. High schoolers frantically memorizing for exams and graduates who still get nightmares. But P322 did not display endless rules of sine, cosine, and tangent. This trigonometry had a makeover. From the Greek astronomers who were long credited with first uncovering trigonometry to the modern-day usages, we have always used the rules of sine, cosine, and tangent, figuring out angles and approximate measurements, rounding up to make these complex numbers functional. But the Babylonian tablet could be telling us that not only was there another way all along, but that they found this way first, beating the Greek researchers to the punch by 1500 years. In this Babylonian approach, complicated angles have been replaced by ratios. Mansfield described P322 as a clean and easy way to use trigonometric table. The team unraveled the tablet's meaning and concluded that the lengths of the sides were calculated in ratios, not angles. Mansfield discusses the revolutionary aspects to this tablet, explaining that whilst we may prefer to stick with angles and not shift the status quo, the outside perspective is amazing, reflective of an ancient society and a simpler approach to mathematics. Dr. Mansfield stated, "We have to really get outside our own culture." Matthew Ossendrive, a historian on ancient science from Humboldt University in Berlin, reiterates the value of this discovery, pointing out that the angles we use are only approximate, giving us rough figures we have deemed close enough. By comparison, the use of ratios is far more accurate, leaving the maths as unaltered and exact. Despite all the excitement that came with this discovery, there is still a good deal of speculation surrounding the use of this table. Ossendriver explains that there is no proof that the table was utilized in the ways we use trigonometry today, despite what the research papers are claiming. Another much harsher criticism comes from science historian Joran Freiberg, who retired from the Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden. He emailed Science magazine stating the Babylonians knew nothing about ratios of sides. He instead believes links to trigonometry are purely coincidental. Despite other researchers' uncertainty, Mansfield and his team maintain their belief that P322 is an early trigonometry table and was used for architectural purposes constructing palaces, temples, and canals. Whilst there is a good deal of speculation, the debates surrounding this 3,600-year-old tablet are becoming more exciting and more relevant. Could we incorporate ancient approaches into modern-day teachings of trigonometry? Only time will tell how practical the use of ratios is in trig, but we do know that the dreaded maths of right-angled triangles has been around for much longer than we thought. Genome of a human from an unknown population has been recovered from cave dirt. For decades, tracing populations, both human and animal, has relied on dating remains from bones, with other informants like tools helping to give us clues, set some expectations, and act as evidence supporting the genetic information we receive. Recently, however, we have taken a step forward, identifying the presence of a woman who lived without any bones in sight. An analysis of mud from beneath the floor of a cave has revealed traces of a woman who was alive in the last ice age. Alongside this woman, we also detected wolf and bison DNA within the same sample of dirt. We do not have masses of information surrounding this group, though the woman, wolf, and bison represent a huge turning point in the field of archaeology. The ability to identify ancient populations without any bones having been preserved. Not only did we rely on bones to conduct research like this before, but we also needed a great deal of luck to find them. Bones need to survive potential harsh conditions as well as the general decaying over time. A human skeleton can be nothing but mummified skin and tendons within just 50 years, and by 80 the soft collagen in bones decomposes, leaving bones to crack. Make the discovery of ancient bones from several thousands of years ago much more difficult. Furthermore, environmental conditions can either accelerate or delay this process. Not only do the bones have to survive, but they also need to be in a strong enough condition to preserve the DNA, as this is what gives us the information that can lead to breakthroughs and discoveries. Bones are not the only indicators of human activity in an area, however. Stand the test of time far more so than human remains. We have known for years that the cave in Satserblia in Georgia was an area with lots of human activity used for thousands of years, and yet from these centuries of use only a single woman's genome has been sequenced. The researchers led by evolutionary biologist Per Gil Ebert and archaeologist Ron Panhasi of the University of Vienna in Austria went to the Satserblia cave looking for environmental DNA. They took 6 soil samples from which they found genetic material in mitochondrial DNA. This created a fragmented picture with pieces of a puzzle that needed to be painstakingly sequenced. A huge task, but one with rewarding results. Only a small portion of the woman's genome was found, but even from this small snapshot, researchers concluded she was a member of a previously unknown group of modern humans. The group is extinct but could be an ancestor to present-day humans in Europe and Asia, a link made through the comparison of the genomes. The wolf also represents a now extinct species, demonstrating the significant evolution and changes to wolves that occurred 11,000 years ago. The bison DNA has been tied to the living bison, though linked much more closely to the European and Eurasian bison over that of the North American bison, suggesting some point before the Satserblia cave bison was when the lineage divided. The discovery that DNA can be preserved in sediment is a revolutionary discovery, with the ability to transform the way we conduct archaeological research forever. Amazon rainforest now emits more CO2 than it absorbs. It is no secret that the climate crisis is growing worse with each passing day. The harmful effects of burning fossil fuels, the pollution of the environment, and the disastrous impact of deforestation has been known for years, and yet little has been done to prevent this. And now, as of July 2021, the Amazon rainforest, which has been helping us reduce carbon dioxide, cannot help us anymore. Scientists have confirmed that the Amazon rainforest is now emitting more CO2 than it can absorb. One study shows that these CO2 emissions from the Amazon alone are reaching 1 billion tons each year. When in the not-too-distant past, the Amazon had absorbed CO2 emissions from elsewhere, reducing the overall levels of carbon dioxide polluting our atmosphere. Instead of reducing harmful gases, the Amazon is now adding to them. One key factor is fires that are deliberately being set to use the land for beef and soy production. Other contributors are the ever-rising temperatures and the increasing frequency of droughts, all of which have accumulated to make the southeast region of the Amazon a source of CO2, not a way to reduce it. The state of the Amazon now should serve as a dire warning that the climate crisis, particularly the use of fossil fuels, is at an all-time high and acting is more urgent than ever before. The encouragement of deforestation by the government of Brazil's president, Jair Bolsonaro, has been heavily criticized, with some European countries discussing blocking an EU trade deal with Brazil until action is taken to help the Amazon. The climate crisis poses a real threat to us, to animals, to plants, and to the earth. With the Amazon now producing more carbon dioxide than it is absorbing, the crisis is reaching staggering new levels of severity. New research and discoveries happened continuously throughout society, resulting in new ideas, understandings, and expectations for future research. But what do you make of these past and present discoveries? When you think of Hawaii, you may think of pristine beaches, marine wildlife, and palm trees. But one thing that may not come to mind is that of mysterious flying objects. For the last few years, residents of Hawaii have reported strange objects in the sky, with some noting that some of the strange-looking crafts seem to emerge from the oceans, only to fly off at incredible speeds. This has created an interesting discussion, with some theorizing that these objects may be some type of hyper-advanced aircrafts, while others have said they could belong to the military and that they may be carrying out experiments close to the region. In recent years, though, various individuals have come forward with their stories, detailing that one craft that's often seen around Hawaii is that of a large rectangle, stating that it's black in color and is able to hover motionless without making a sound, and has been seen on a number of occasions making a quick exit. The black rectangle has been captured on camera, although as with many sightings, capturing clear footage of it seems to be a challenge. The craft is often seen hovering high in the sky during the night time, which makes capturing it difficult. Although other residents have said this has also been seen flying close to the ocean, as if it's scanning the waves and looking for something. One resident was able to capture a photo of the strange craft from their car and then upload it online. Many users said they weren't aware that this craft was being reported by locals, but did say that similar-looking objects had been seen by people in different countries and said that perhaps these crafts could be linked. Further noting that different shaped crafts also share the same abilities as this craft, with one of the most well-known ones being that of the Black Triangle. But as of right now, though, it's not known where these crafts are coming from and who owns them. One user said the following about the photo. To me, it looks like this craft is partially clothed. A common theme with these types of sightings. These crafts are being seen more often. And to me, I wouldn't be surprised if more of these types of photographs will be released in the future. While another user said this, it's not just Hawaii where these objects is being seen. I live in Brazil and it's not uncommon to see this show craft. Many residents here in Brazil are seeing these things, but no one knows what they are. They are sometimes seen being followed by black helicopters, but again, very rarely does this make the news. One user said they often visited Hawaii during their time in the military. Went on to detail some of the strange things they saw while out there. Although they didn't see the strange black triangle, they did go on to note that they saw various different flying crafts, and that they were told not to talk about them or ask any questions. As for what the craft is that people are seeing, some have said it could be a top-secret military aircraft, others have said that it is an unidentified flying object. Or some have said it matches the description of a USO, or an unidentified submerged object. Many people have heard of unidentified flying objects, but many may not be aware of unidentified submerged objects. These are unidentified flying objects that are seen in and around oceans, with some people even claiming that they've seen these crafts entering the water without making a splash. It's not just random people who have reported seeing these crafts either. People in the military have seen these large UFOs enter the water without making a sound, and even reported them staying under the water for several hours. It's these types of reports that have caused some to think that there's bases under our oceans, and that these crafts are using them, and that perhaps they could be part of something much bigger. These USOs are reported to look very similar to that of UFOs, and it's caused some to question whether the two are different, or whether normal UFOs have the ability to go underwater without being detected. As mentioned earlier, people who live in Hawaii and who have seen this mysterious craft have also said that they're normally accompanied by mysterious black helicopters, noting that shortly after this strange black rectangle is seen, various black helicopters seem to come out of nowhere and patrol the region. These black helicopters are not anything new, with amateur researchers saying they first started appearing during the 1970s. Although some have said that they were reported before this. They are most commonly seen during sightings of unidentified crafts, and those that have looked into them have said they belong to a secret branch of the military that looks into mysterious happenings. They were seen during the 1970s when cattle disappearances were being reported. From then on, amateur researchers have said they're often seen following mysterious crafts and help aid in cleanup operations that are being hidden from the general public. Black helicopters have also been blamed for interrogating individuals that saw or photographed strange flying crafts, with witnesses saying that they've been harassed by these helicopters weeks after the sighting. As of right now, it's not officially known who owns these and what their true purpose is, but due to them showing up around strange activity, it's caused individuals to label them as part of a secret black project. Although the strange rectangle craft isn't seen that often, residents who live close to Hawaii have said that it shows up every so often. For years now, people have been seeing a variety of strange crafts in our sky, many of which are quickly debunked and forgotten about. In recent years, though, the general public has been showing that there could be more to these sightings than what officials are letting on. Pilots and other professionals have come forward and shared their stories, saying that they don't know what they are and have been warned about talking about them. Although some users have said that we're heading in the right direction, Others have said that we have a long way to go until we're told about some of the truths of our world. So what do you make of this interesting craft? Do you think it belongs to the military? Or is it perhaps something more mysterious? Researchers in the field of ufology have been collecting reports surrounding unidentified flying objects, and this has spanned over the past several centuries, and they found a strange connection between numerous appearances of unidentified craft and the appearance of a fine thread-like material referred to as angel hair. For reasons not entirely understood, there appears to be a cotton-like or thread-like material that's deposited from moving extraterrestrial aircrafts that disintegrates when touched or slowly turns into a jelly-like substance over time. Oddly enough, researchers are not the only people interested in studying the angel hair phenomenon. According to published Air Force files back in 1963, there appears to be evidence that the United States Air Force conducted immediate investigations of all angel hair reports within the United States and allied countries long before UFO researchers were ever made aware of the materials connected to unidentified flying objects. Their research, however, included more than just the gathering of angel hair materials for testing and providing written eyewitness reports for Project Saucer and Project Bluebird. For reasons not entirely understood, the United States Air Force seemed to have engaged in active cover-up of the angel hair events and suppress evidence from getting into the hands of third-party analysis. One of the first reported angel hair sightings of the United States occurred on the 22nd of October back in 1954, outside a small school in Marysville. Although angel hair reports had begun occurring in the French countryside for some years by this point, the Marysville angel hair sightings would be the first sighting reported across the Americas, and so would be immediately investigated by the United States Air Force within several days of its reporting. According to United States Air Force files, during an afternoon recess, the students of Jerome Elementary School claimed to have seen an incredibly shiny object that hovered in the sky and that moved at incredible speeds. After an unknown period of time, the children claimed that the object suddenly disappeared and was nowhere to be seen. At around the same time that the object has appeared, students and teachers watched as white cotton-like tufts of material began to slowly float down to the ground and the nearby areas. The unknown thread-like material continued to fall for an estimated 45 minutes following the disappearance of the shiny, unidentified flying object and caught the attention of the teachers who were worried as to what the material could have been. After hearing the collective UFO accounts of the students playing during recess, according to the teachers and some of the bravest students who had picked up the material, the thread-like white material was made up of long strands, which were described as being very fine and soft and could be stretched and rolled into tiny spheres in their palms. After being touched and manipulated, however, the material would soon disappear and leave behind a green stain on the hands of those who touched it. The angel hair was reported to have been dispersed in a 3-mile radius surrounding the Marysville Jerome Elementary School, and was described as being similar to that of a thin blanket covering the road. The following is a statement taken directly from Air Force files made available in the scientific examination publication, The World of Flying Saucers. A fall of angel hair occurred in the United States on October 22, 1954. Near a school in Marysville, at afternoon recess, the pupils of Jerome Elementary School noticed a dazzling bright object in the sky. It disappeared, and for the next 45 minutes, both children and teachers watched white, cotton-like tusks floating slowly down to the ground. The material was in long strands, very fine and soft, could be stretched and rolled into tiny balls, but quickly vanished to nothing and left a green stain on their hands. The stuff clung to grass and cars, draped telephone wires for a distance of 3 miles, and was like a misty canopy over the road. Oddly enough, despite an immediate reaction from the United States Air Force to investigate the incident, official reports would claim that none of the angel hair material had been preserved or sent in for analysis, or that the material had disintegrated before Air Force investigators could retrieve a sample. The Air Force investigations would later debunk the mysterious nature of the Marysville incident in 1963, more than 9 years after the event had taken place, by claiming that the angel hair material was nothing more than typical gossamers seen from migrating spiders. The following statement is a direct quote from the official Air Force explanation of the event. Unfortunately, none of the material was preserved and no analysis was possible. Merceville is near Columbus, an industrial center, and the stuff might have been waste products from one of the nearby factories. Since similar thoughts were reported in Indiana during the same period, the substance was most probably gossamer. As in the French incident, the time was late October and the weather was perfect. A warm autumn day with sunny, cloudless skies. Both the time and the weather were ideal for migrating spiders to take to the air, float down to earth on their puffy parachutes, and then discard the no longer necessary gossamer. The most peculiar facet of this explanation, however, is that it's completely erroneous and nearly entirely fabricated. The first major issue with the typical gossamer explanation is that spiders do not migrate in large groups. Typically, spiders are isolationist creatures and prefer to live in territorial and solitary lives. Migrating in large groups is incredibly rare, and is typically done only during a population explosion caused by factors not typical of their environment, such as large wildfires forcing them out of their location, or an overabundance of food that cause a population growth, which is usually only done when large amounts of food waste are left in dumping areas. Neither of these events were reported to have happened prior to this moment in October 1954. The second major issue is that spiders require warm wind conditions with a very slow and stable wind speed, less than 3 knots. During October back in 1954, the month of the sighting, Hurricane Hazel had been traveling across the East Coast and in 18th and 19th in the eastern states. Floods which followed Hurricane Hazel were severe in bands for about 100 miles, extending from North Carolina through western New York and eastern Ohio. At least 93 lives were lost and damages were estimated to have been $250 million. This summary also describes 22 minor floods which occurred in scattered areas, and this was throughout the United States. According to official meteorological reports and surveyor damage, Hurricane Hazel was the deadliest, second costliest, and most intense hurricane of the 1954 Atlantic hurricane season. Its effects were witnessed firsthand between the 15th of October to the 19th of October, with cold fronts lasting well past October. According to Air Force explanations, there is no possible way that a migration of spiders could have taken place, given the known data and the recently learned experiments involving spider migration in the modern day, making the entire explanation surrounding the weather conditions being ideal for spider migration a complete fabrication, which was published 9 years following the event, in the hopes that citizens would be unwilling to look into the weather conditions any further. The third major issue with the explanations that neither the children nor the teachers saw spiders mixed in with a thread-like material, given their eyewitness statements, claiming to have immediately picked up the material and played with it. There were no reported sightings of spiders or baby spiders within the material. Provided the fact that such a large amount of material would have required a mass migration for exceeding several hundred spiders, the lack of mention of any spiders seemed entirely anomalous to the spider migration claims. Despite the overwhelming evidence against the official Air Force reports and claims, the United States Air Force still holds the official declaration that the material was most definitely spider gossamer, and that the effects of Hurricane Hazel did not exist in the area, and that the weather was considered a warm and pleasant day. So what do you guys make of this? Sometimes science needs a little bit of time to reveal something more interesting. Discoveries often exist for centuries before we stumble across them and make sense of what we have found. So today, we will be taking a look at 3 interesting discoveries that were centuries old by the time they were revealed. 3,000-year-old Bible discovered in Turkey. In 2015, a Bible was discovered in the city of Tokat, Turkey. The Bible was not your typical everyday edition of the good book. However, this particular Bible has been dated back between 101 AD and 200 AD. The Turkish police uncovered the artifact during an operation to stop the smuggling of ancient objects to other countries. Alongside the Bible, the police found a collection of expensive jewelry, 53 ancient coins, and 2 arrowheads. The origin of the Bible is unknown, as is its maker. The cover of the book was unfortunately damaged beyond repair, but the illustrations within it, decorated using gold leaf, have been said to form the image of Jesus Christ and Mary. The text within is written in ancient Assyrian, and the Bible has only about 50 pages left, most of which are in relatively good but delicate condition. The pages are stunning and albeit faded. Their gorgeous imagery is a feat to behold, even today. In recent times, Tokat has become a place infamous for the crime of smuggling mysterious artifacts, made only more prominent in 2015 when the painting Orphan Man standing by Vincent van Gogh was discovered in the back of a car of a suspected smuggler. This led to the eventual discovery of the golden decorated Bible, which theologians prayed would give further insight into biblical matters and the ways in which Christianity developed over time. However, nothing specific has yet been shared with the public concerning the contents of this millennium-old book. What did Jesus look like? Ever since Christianity sowed its seeds into the ground of common culture, the question of what did Jesus Christ look like has accompanied it. The Bible itself offers little insight, but for the past few centuries a specific image of Jesus has become a staple in the Western and European world. Fair skin, wavy chestnut hair that falls down to his chest, a beard, and more often than not eyes of crystal blue. This is the view of Jesus which has been passed down for generations, depicted as such in a myriad of devotional pieces and church-stained glass windows. This version of Jesus is recognizable anywhere, and yet it's not an accurate depiction. Several aspects feed into why this version of Jesus, which we're all so accustomed to, even exists, though it's believed it began in the Byzantine era during the 4th century AD. Byzantines portrayed Jesus in a symbolic manner. They valued meaning and creative significance above realism. In fact, the clothing worn by Jesus in many depictions is reminiscent of robes worn by Hellenic pagan gods, use as the early portrayals of Christ were inspired by pagan artworks and grandiose devotional sculptures. Long wavy hair and beards were a symbol then of divinity and godhood. The artists of the Byzantine Empire wished to make Jesus akin to a younger Zeus. Most interestingly, when early Christians were not depicting Jesus as the divine ruler of heaven, they tended to portray him as a man normal in most ways, that is to say, short-haired and not bearded, though beards were thought to make philosophers and sage men stand out amongst the common people. For men of wisdom, it's long been speculated that our modern image of Jesus is actually based on the infamous son of the sinful Pope, as it is around the height of his glory that paintings of Jesus begin to resemble a more Western European depiction which looks suspiciously like the papal commander. However, there is a lack of conclusive evidence that could prove this to be the truth, so speculations are all we have in regard to this theory. Richard Neve, a forensic anthropologist, took part in a BBC documentary, Son of God, in 2001, for which he created a digital model of a Galilean man. Neve did not claim this to be a recreation of Jesus Christ's face and explained that it was meant to merely spark the idea that maybe Jesus would have been a man of his region and time, that is to say, not the Western depiction we've come to recognize. For his model used an authentic skull discovered in the area. Robert Cargill, an assistant professor of classical civilizations and religion at the University of Iowa, stated, "We don't know what Jesus looked like, but if all of the things that we do know about him are true, he was a Palestinian Jewish man living in Galilee in the 1st century. So he would have looked like a Palestinian Jewish man of the 1st century. He would have looked like a Jewish Galilean." Russian archaeologists find elongated skull with perfect teeth. The next discovery involves elongated skulls similar to the Paraka skulls. Only this time the findings were even more unnerving. A female skeleton was found with an astonishing set of teeth that had been preserved for between 1700 and 2000 years. The skeleton was found in Russia at a 4,000-year-old site, Arcane, that is often referred to as Russia's Stonehenge. The site is home to the remains of a structure, and it has become a hotspot for psychics, clairvoyants, and more. Before discovering the skull at Arcane, many visitors had unusual experiences there, describing hallucinations and strange anomalies. People have even claimed to see UFOs at the site, bringing others along in hopes that they could see UFOs as well. Since purposely elongating skulls is a practice from the past, by using force or a wrap to mold a child or baby's head, finding an elongated skull isn't all that mysterious. Many have tried to claim the skulls are from aliens due to their unique look, but researchers know this to be false. With that being said, no one is quite sure why cranial deformation was practiced thousands of years ago. Some potential theories consist of using it for men to look more masculine, or perhaps to distinguish between a higher social class. Elongated skulls are found in many ancient civilizations, but it still does not provide an answer for how a full set of teeth was preserved over that many years. When trying to determine if the skeleton was from the original Archaean civilization, they used radiocarbon dating and found it came from a significantly earlier time. The woman was believed to have come from a tribe known as the Sarmatians, but there isn't enough evidence to prove that this is correct at the moment. It's almost impossible to believe that her teeth could stay intact for such a long period without modern methods of preservation. Consistently, a wide assortment of things happen, some of which can be clarified thoughtfully and others that are outside human ability to grasp. Some of them dig into the starting points, brain science, and development of people in more profound profundity. A portion of these can help us in settling issues. The rest of the proof, particularly the logical discoveries, just adds to the uncertainty. So today we'll examine 3 interesting discoveries. Deep in the Pentagon, a secret AI program to find hidden nuclear missiles. The U.S. military is expanding spending on a mysterious exploration exertion to utilize man-made reasoning to assist with expecting the dispatch of an atomic-competent rocket, just as track and target versatile launches in North Korea and elsewhere. The exertion has gone to a great extent unreported, and a couple of openly accessible insights regarding it are covered under a layer of close to impervious language in the most recent Pentagon financial plan. Yet, U.S. authorities acquainted with the exploration told Reuters there are different arranged projects currently under approach to investigate how to foster AI-driven frameworks to more readily secure the United States against a potential atomic rocket strike. Such PC frameworks would have the option to have an independent mind, scouring colossal measures of information including satellite symbolism with a speed and precision past the ability of people to search for indications of arrangements for a rocket dispatch, as per the Greater Part 12 sources. The sources included U.S. authorities who talked about the state of namelessness on the grounds that the exploration is grouped. Cautioned, the U.S. government would have the option to seek conciliatory alternatives or, on account of an impending assault, the military would have more opportunity to attempt to annihilate the rockets before they were dispatched or attempt to capture them. We ought to do our best to find that rocket before they dispatch it and make it progressively harder to get it off the ground, one of the authorities said. The Trump organization had proposed dramatically multiplying subsidizing in the following year's financial plan to $83 million for only one of the AI-driven rocket programs, as indicated by a few U.S. authorities and spending reports. The lift in financing has not been recently announced. While the sum is still moderately little, it is one marker of the developing significance of the examination on AI-fueled enemies of rocket frameworks when the United States faces an all-self-assured Russia and a huge atomic weapons danger from long-lasting North Korea. What AI and AI permit you to do is discover the needle in the sheath, said Bob Work, a boss of AI innovation who was Agent Guard Secretary until last July without alluding to any individual undertakings. One individual acquainted with the project said it incorporates a pilot projected zeroed in on North Korea. Washington is progressively worried about Pyongyang's improvement of portable rockets that can be stowed away in passages, timberlands, and caverns. The presence of a North Korea-sent adventure has not been recently announced. While that adventure has been left well enough alone, the military has been clear about its advantage in AI. The Pentagon, for instance, has revealed it is utilizing AI to recognize objects from video assembled in its robot program. As a component of a freely promoted exertion dispatched, some U.S. authorities say AI spending, generally speaking on military projects, remains horribly lacking. A new chip could put AI in the palm of your hand. The objective of a man-made consciousness framework that works like the human cerebrum drew a stage nearer as of late. Analysts at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology declared another particular reason chip that speeds up neural network calculations by 3 to multiple times over current chips, while lessening power utilization by up to 95%. It does it by working in a simple style more in accordance with how the mind functions, instead of managing the endless series of ones and zeros in conventional processing. The consequence? AI neural organizations could not just lift enormous scope supercomputing, yet additionally be useful in cell phones, robots, automated vehicles, and clinical gadgets, where they could perform complex activities going from cutting-edge confirmation to receptive dynamics that would, some way or another, include interfacing with power-hoarding workers through the cloud. Working in the genuinely new, however expanding field of neuromorphic registering, the MIT group planned a chip with counterfeit neurotransmitters that can vacillate with the progression of data, the manner in which neural connections in the mind work. This extraordinarily lessens the measure of the force required and holds potential for ultimately pressing massive computational ability into minuscule gadgets. At last, we need a chip as large as a fingernail to supplant one major supercomputer. Ji-won Kim, who drove the examination group, revealed to MIT News. This opens a venturing stone to deliver genuine fake equipment. The allure of neuromorphic registering and neural organizations lies in the productivity of the human cerebrum. Cannot figure pi like an advanced processor, yet it can deal with data streams from different making contemplations, deciphering sights, sounds, and scents, controlling in essence activities, and is liquid in applying assets to issues as the need emerges. What's more, it does everything with almost no force. In 2013, an examination group hoping to mimic 1 second of organic mind movement ran 82,994 processors and a petabyte of framework memory for 40 minutes on the Riken Research Institute's supercomputer, utilizing sufficient power for 10,000 homes. The mind paradoxically runs on around 20 watts, a large portion of the power of a fridge light. The MIT group is not the only one in its quest for neural organizations. IBM, working with the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, has fostered the TrueNorth neuromorphic chip design, which can run on 70 milliwatts, and is equipped for 46 billion synaptic activities each second per watt. IBM created TrueNorth under DARPA's Systems of Neuromorphic Adaptive Plastic Scalable Electronics program, and is utilizing it to fabricate a 64-chip supercomputer for the Air Force Research Laboratory. ARL plans to utilize it for cutting-edge example and article acknowledgement and the tactile preparation of sound, video, and other sensor-created information into something a PC can utilize. The Intelligence Advanced Research Projects activity is investigating another front, putting $100 million into its machine intelligence from cortical networks, or Micron's program to examine the working of the cerebrum to further develop AI and AI calculations. China additionally is looking into the issue, with Tsinghua University in Beijing fostering a low-power neuromorphic chip called THNKR, which can run for a year on 8 AA batteries. China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology spread out a 3-year plan in December that incorporates large-scale manufacturing of neural network chips by 2020. Artificial intelligence can spot holes in the sun's corona. Researchers from the University of Graz, Austria, Skoltech, and their associates from the US and Germany have fostered another neural organization that can dependently identify coronal openings from space-based perceptions. This application prepares for more solid space climate forecasts and gives important data to the investigation of the sun-oriented movement cycle. The paper was distributed in the journal Astronomy and Astrophysics. Similar to how our life on Earth relies upon the light of the sun, our electronic life relies upon the movement of our nearest star and its connections with Earth's magnetic field. For the natural eye, the sun shows up practically steady. However, the sun is exceptionally dynamic, every now and again showing emissions and causing geomagnetic storms on Earth. The sun-oriented crown is continually being observed by satellite-based telescopes. In these perceptions, one of the noticeable highlights is expanded dim districts called coronal openings. They seem dim in light of the fact that plasma particles can escape from the sun's surface into the interplanetary space along the magnetic field, leaving openings in the crown. The appearance and area of these openings in the sun change because of sun-powered movement and give significant data about the drawn-out advancement of the sun. The identification of coronal openings is a troublesome assignment for traditional calculations and is additionally trying for human spectators on the grounds that there are likewise other dull districts in the sun-oriented air similar to fibers that can be effectively mistaken for coronal openings, says Robert Yerelam, an exploration researcher at the University of Graz and the lead creator of the examination. But what do you make of these discoveries? Sleep. We use it to escape from the stresses and burdens of everyday life. Unfortunately, though, many of us don't get enough of it. Everyone dreams, even people who believe they never actually do. Whether or not we remember our dreams, we all have them, for around 2 hours every night. The average person has 3 to 5 distinct dreams per night, lasting anywhere from a few seconds up to 30 minutes. So today, we'll be taking a look at 3 bizarre effects of extreme sleep deprivation. Randy Gardner's sleep deprivation experiment: what happens when you do not sleep for 11 days in a row? 17-year-old Randy Gardner was able to force himself to stay awake for 11 days and 25 minutes. The high school student carried out his record-breaking feat in January of 1964 with one of his classmates, Bruce McAllister. Together, both of them decided to force themselves to stay awake as part of a science project. They picked 11 days as their goal, as it would narrowly beat the current world record achieved by a DJ in Honolulu who stayed awake for 260 hours, just under 11 days. The two decided that only one of them could put themselves through the experiment, while the other would be tasked with recording and documenting the journey. Randy Gardner lost the coin toss and became the unlucky test subject. However, this plan quickly fell apart, as Bruce was forced to stay awake with Randy to document their findings. Within a few days, both of the boys were sleep-deprived. The attention of William Dement, a sleep researcher from Stanford University. Dement was very concerned with the project and stated that it could have long-lasting negative side effects. During the 1960s, sleep experts had yet to determine if sleep deprivation could cause permanent neurological damage, saying that fatal side effects were a legitimate concern. Historical experiments which tested sleep deprivation on cats have resulted in the animals passing away after 15 days without sleep. However, the boys insisted that the experiments in question used harmful chemicals on the animals to keep them awake, which invalidated the results. After 3 days without sleep, they noticed that Randy's senses started to play up, revealing that he became more sensitive to smells. To the surprise of everyone involved, his basketball skills improved after the first few sleepless nights. He was very physically fit, claims Dement. It became very difficult to keep Randy awake during this time, though, and it was remarked that if he was not physically active, simply closing his eyes would cause him to immediately fall asleep. During this time, national media attention began covering the story more in depth, and with the newfound interest and public support, Randy was taken to a military hospital where his brain waves were monitored. While this story captured the attention of millions of people across the world, the results seemed to remain elusive. Although the reported effects on Randy after 3 to 5 days without sleep have been revealed to the public, it seems that no information can be found beyond those days. All of the major stories and interviews regarding the experiment discuss the side effects after the first few days without sleep, but then suspiciously skip to the end and begin discussing how long Randy slept for when the experiment was over. This poses some serious questions. Everyone interested in the story is mostly concerned with the behavior recorded in the final days of his experiment. Why is it that interviewers skip over the most interesting portion of the experiment? A few years after Gardner's record break, the Guinness Book of Records stopped certifying attempts, warning of the danger to people's health. The results of this bizarre experiment may never be known. Peter Tripp's sleep experiment in 1959. Peter Tripp went 200 hours without sleep, but the consequences of the experiment had a massive effect on his life. Tripp was an up-and-coming radio DJ who operated out of New York. He decided to stay awake for 200 hours, revealing that he did this so that more people would listen to his radio broadcast. However, shortly after this, the narrative was changed, and he said that he was doing this for charity. Throughout the experiment, Tripp would continue his radio broadcast as usual and allow everyone to listen in as his mind slowly began to deteriorate. During the final 66 hours of the experiment, he was kept awake by various stimulating drugs which allowed him to continue his show. After 100 hours without sleep, Tripp could no longer answer simple maths problems or even recite the alphabet. He began suffering from vivid hallucinations, and he claims to have seen flames burst from a dresser when it was opened. The hallucination was so realistic that he accused the scientists who were working with him of setting the fire to scare him. He became increasingly paranoid and started to believe that the scientists were plotting against him. At one point, he accused the researchers of attempting to frame him for a crime. Unfortunately, it seems that the experiment had a long-lasting effect on him. His wife divorced him and he lost his job. It is unclear if Tripp ever fully recovered from the experiment. He passed away on January 31, 2000 from a stroke. Yang Xiaoxing died after 11 days without sleep. 26-year-old Yang Xiaoxing was able to go 11 days without sleep, but this act would cost him his life. The young man set out to survive 11 sleepless nights to watch every game in the 2012 European Championships. As a hardcore football fan, he was determined to stay awake to see each game live. His friends and family reported that he lived a relatively healthy life. Lu Shiling, a Chinese doctor who studied the case, declared that he was in good health before carrying out this experiment. The doctor theorized that his sleeplessness impaired his immune system so much that it sent his body into shock, ultimately ending his life. After the last game of the European Championship was completed, he finally gave his body the rest that it needed. However, it was too late for the young man and he reportedly passed away in his sleep. Scientists have determined that after just 24 hours without sleep, detrimental changes begin to take effect. The first signs of damaging sleep deprivation include increased stress hormone production, raising blood pressure levels, and decreased cognitive ability. And after 24 to 48 hours without sleep, the body slows down glucose metabolism in the body. It is hypothesized that this is a defense mechanism employed by the body to preserve glucose. Glucose is necessary for brain function. Without it, your brain will simply shut down. Along with this life-threatening scenario, the immune system becomes significantly impaired and the body's internal temperature begins to slowly decline. What do you make of these sleep experiments? Many people may not be aware of Philip J. Corso. However, if you're someone who's interested in mysteries, you may be aware of who Philip Corso is and the message that he was trying to spread. He published a book in 1997 with William J. Burns, whose son may remember from the TV show UFO Hunters. The book shares accounts of what happened in Roswell in 1947. If anyone should have written a book on this topic, it was Philip Corso. After all, he had spent 21 years in the military and had a lot of background knowledge of the event that took place. Philip goes into detail about how he was one of the people who was in charge of the department that studied the crash site back in 1947. He says that it's no coincidence that after the crash site was discovered and the evidence was taken to a secure location, advanced technological discoveries soon started to be made, some of which he says include the circuit chip, optical fibers, night vision goggles, and various other discoveries that would help mankind. He says that these discoveries directly correlate between the event that happened and said this helped humanity jump forward various years. He would continue to talk and release what he knew about the event, saying that he was able to get up close and personal with some of this tech, and that he was even in charge of sharing this with top U.S. corporations. Philip may sound like someone who had an overactive imagination, but the truth is he lives up to his credentials. He was an officer of National Security Council under President Dwight Eisenhower, and when journalists tried to debunk what he was saying in terms of his career, a Freedom of Information Act request backed up that he was telling the truth. Many believers, though, said that some of these claims were outlandish, and that instead of helping the community, all it was doing was damaging it. The story would soon get darker when it was announced that shortly after releasing the book, he passed away due to an unexpected heart attack. This sudden passing caused some in the community to suggest that something else was at play, and that he was being warned not to talk about this topic. It wasn't long before many believers said that he was silenced. When the book was first released, it was applauded by many in the community, saying that he was brave for coming out and sharing what he knew about the events. Some, though, just couldn't get on board with some of the things that he was saying. After Freedom of Information Act requests were submitted, Many of the records show how important Philip Corso was, showing that he had a large file and record that would back up some of the impressive things that he had done during his career. He was involved and contributed to the prisoner of war and missing in action proceedings, along with having a lengthy career in military intelligence. It's for this reason that many have asked the same question. Why would a man with such an impressive record lie about what he'd seen and experienced? His impressive military record would have been tainted with these bizarre claims, and he probably knew that. Yet, he kept pursuing this path and tried to reveal the truth to the general public. It's for this reason that some believe that he was telling the truth, and this whole time he just wanted to share what he knew to the masses. Many critics have since come forward and said he lied about working under the Eisenhower administration. However, Freedom of Information Act documents reveal that he was in fact employed via the Army intelligence and was labeled National Security Council staff, Eisenhower administration. Phillips said the following to the House Subcommittee of Military Personnel back in 1996, shortly before releasing his book. Upon my return to the United States, I was a son of the Operations Coordinating Board, OCB of the White House National Security Council, and handled virtually all projects to U.S. prisoners of war. It's also reported that Philip Corso had been tested and showed no signs of any illnesses and didn't suffer from anything during his time in the military. In his book, he goes on to detail that when the military personnel arrived at the scene, small bodies were discovered in the wreck. Further saying that this, along with the machine itself, was recovered by U.S. officials. According to Philip Corso, and which was backed up by others who were on the scene that day, gray humanoids were found close by, but Corso revealed that they weren't real extraterrestrials, but rather machines that were created to work on other planets. What's interesting about this claim is that it matches up with what many abductees have said. During their experience, many abductees noticed that the beings that had taken them on board came across as robotic, noting that they lacked any sort of emotion. Could this be then that the gray humanoids are not aliens but rather robots? Philip Corso goes on to mention this and says that those that had been taken up into advanced aircrafts would have experienced these beings, and that they're not what they look like but are rather biomachines. He further detailed that he was able to find out that during the autopsy, government officials confirmed they were robotic entities, saying they lacked the functions of humans such as a digestive system, and that they were linked to the ship and were able to control it, noting that it was done via electricity or bioelectricity. He ended by saying that these humanoid robots were created in order to travel vast distances across space. Some have said this is what humans will likely do in the next couple of 100 years. So who's to say that another civilization couldn't have done this? Although this story is interesting, not everyone is convinced, with some saying that these are just words and that he did this in order to sell a book. NASA and other space agencies have also revealed that they've never found extraterrestrials and that none of these stories can be backed up. So what do you make of these claims? Do you think they're real? Or are they just the words of a man that was trying to sell a book? B. As humanity pursues its natural curiosity, we never cease to find new information that changes our view. Taking a look at 3 unbelievable scientific findings. And identified 15,000-year-old viruses found in Tibetan glaciers. A recent discovery has uncovered ancient viruses which were previously unknown to humanity. These newly discovered viruses were frozen in the Tibetan glaciers for 15,000 years. This event presents yet another effect of climate change that we have begun experiencing. The discovery was made by researchers who analyzed ice samples from the Galia ice cap of the Tibetan Plateau in China. This particular ice cap was riddled with airborne particles that were trapped during their original formation. The glacier had formed gradually, allowing for layers to be built clearly on top of one another. Each layer of ice represented a period in which the glacier grew. Dozens of intriguing particles and pathogens were found within each layer of ice, with every layer more historic than the last. The leading microbiologist of the study, Shi Pingzhong, remarked these glaciers were formed gradually, and along with dust and gases, many viruses were also deposited in that ice. When researchers began observing the earliest formed layers of the glacier, that is when they made their most shocking discovery. They stumbled upon a virus that had never been documented before. one that was dated to be an estimated 15,000 years old. The discovery has motivated archaeologists and microbiologists alike across the world. This find tells researchers that there's still things out there that are waiting to be discovered. Finding ancient viruses that have been so well preserved allows us to gain a greater insight into the biological conditions of our planetary past. During the time that the glacier was formed, the planet was under very extreme weather conditions. Conditions that we have never seen before to this extent. As climate change continues to become a greater concern at the forefront of research, we are beginning to delve deeper into valuable information from studying extreme bouts of climate change in the past. With everything that's happened recently, it is ever more pressing to determine how will potentially dangerous bacteria and viruses respond to climate change. Studying ancient viruses may be the key to unlocking the answer. As many ancient glaciers begin melting in the rising temperatures, biologists and pathologists have begun scrambling to preserve as much material as possible. Glaciers contain some of the most valuable information regarding ancient viruses and pathogens. Another potential danger regarding these melting glaciers is that the viruses may be brought back to life in the warmth. Viruses that have been frozen in time for centuries have been found to re-emerge as ever. This exact event took place in Siberia in 2016. A 12-year-old boy passed away after being infected with anthrax, an extremely rare disease that was largely thought of as being extinct since 1957. Around the same time as the boy's loss of life, over 20 people were hospitalized after contracting the same disease. Later, it was theorized that a 75-year-old reindeer had been the cause of the outbreak. In the early to mid-1940s, when the disease was more prominent, a reindeer had contracted anthrax. When the animal passed away, its carcass was covered underground and frozen. The soil remained in permafrost until 2006. It was at this time that the 12-year-old boy and many other community members contracted anthrax. Scientists argue that the virus within the animal carcass had been preserved in ice but had not been eliminated. Upon the climate warming, the disease was released and claimed the young boy's life. This devastating tragedy shocked the world and only further proved that climate change is an imminent threat. British paratrooper survived falling 15,000 feet and crashing through the roof of a house. A British paratrooper survived after falling 15,000 feet from a military plane. The soldier's parachute malfunctioned and failed to open as he plummeted to earth. He then crashed through the roof of a family home in California, landing in their kitchen. For the residents of Atascadero in California, it was just another quiet Tuesday evening, until a life-changing event crashed into the neighborhood. The intended landing spot was within Camp Roberts, about 30 miles south of the home in Villa Cielo in San Luis Obispo County that he landed in. Rose Martin was the first to find the injured British soldier after hearing him tear through her neighbor's roof. She reportedly ran into the neighbor's house to assist the paratrooper. When asked about her experience, she stated, "I ran in to make sure he was okay and I checked on him. His eyes were open, but I wasn't sure if there were any injuries. I didn't want anyone to move him. It's a miracle in my estimation. I mean, who lands like that without a parachute and lives?" Around 5 p.m. on July 6th, the British Army was performing their standard high-altitude low-opening or halo training exercises. During the exercises, the paratrooper is given control over where to land by effectively using their parachutes. However, this unfortunate soldier's parachute malfunctioned and failed to open in time. This caused him to lose control of where or how he would land. The reason that his parachute was unable to provide him with a safe landing is due to the nature of halo jumps. Halo jumps were designed and extensively used during the Vietnam conflict. This unique tactic requires paratroopers to wait until they reach an altitude of 3,000 feet before deploying their parachutes. This was effective during this time because it leaves the soldiers less vulnerable during times of conflict. Once the parachute has been deployed, a soldier is now clearly visible from the ground and thus made to be a bigger target. Waiting until the last possible opportunity to open your parachute allows soldiers to minimize this vulnerability. This makes the timing incredibly important. Just a few moments of struggling with the parachute before finally deploying the reserve was enough to put the paratrooper in a life-threatening position. How did he survive after his main parachute failed to open? His reserve chute was successfully deployed, which dampened the impact. The unidentified soldier, along with his fellow British Special Air Service or SAS members, is extensively trained in these rare scenarios to minimize risk and injury. The SAS has a long history of conducting many successful halo jumps. According to the Atascadero police, the parachutist was conscious but stunned with complaints of pain but no visible serious injuries. No other parties were injured. Residents of the home were not in the home during the event. All other members of the training group reportedly touched ground safely in the designated landing field nearby. Massive earthquake caused 100 large sinkholes in Croatian village. On December 31st, a devastating 6.4 magnitude earthquake rocked the city of Petrinja to its very core. Just 6 days after the fact, as the community was still reeling from the devastation, a massive sinkhole opened up. The sinkhole measured 98 feet wide and 49 feet deep. After its emergence, at least one new sinkhole was created nearly every day. After a month had passed, nearly 100 sinkholes had opened up within the struggling village. Many events within this story are entirely unprecedented. For starters, the 6.4 magnitude earthquake is the strongest earthquake that Croatia has suffered in over 4 decades. Thousands of homes have been entirely decimated and 7 people have been reported have been wiped out in its aftermath. What makes this story even more unnerving is the sinkholes. While earthquakes are known to cause sinkholes, the sheer number and size of the resulting sinkholes have baffled experts. The sinkholes covered over 3.8 square miles of territory in the area and only seem to grow with each passing moment. The original sinkhole is now the largest in the village. When it first emerged, it was about 33 feet wide, but the gaping maw started to expand immediately. Over the next 3 months, the hole tripled in size, resulting in an unbelievable diameter of over 95 feet. As a result of this truly amazing yet devastating event, geologists and seismologists around the world have made the trip to Croatia to study the damages. It is known that Croatia is built on a highly active seismic system. This predisposes the area to earthquakes of disproportionate magnitude. As a result of this, liquefaction can be an expected result. Liquefaction is a process in which solid ground begins to behave like liquid. However, Joseph Stipkevich, a leading seismologist within the Department of Geophysics in Zagreb, claimed nobody expected the appearance of so many sinkholes. To understand this unexpected result, this came to be. The leading theory is that Croatia is experiencing cover collapse sinkholes. These sinkholes are unique because they begin to form long before an earthquake opens them for the world to see. Cover collapse sinkholes are formed when the underground rock experiences erosion from the water below the surface. This water creates underground caverns which effectively hollow the ground within the area. If the surface area of the topsoil is composed of thick, sturdy materials such as clay, this hollow ground will be undetectable from the surface and will not appear to be dangerous. Croatia unfortunately has these exact conditions, which likely led to much of the ground being hollowed out before the massive earthquake hit the village. What do you make of these interesting discoveries? There is nothing more tantalizing to the human species than a good mystery. Thrillers in the forms of novels, movies, and even campfire tales are often consumed by the thousands who love the adrenaline rush of solving a mystery. However, some of the most pervasive mysteries are those that occur in real life, and these are the ones that are often most difficult to solve. So today, we will be looking at 3 instances where people disappeared and answers were never found. Tukaturi. The last mystery from Easter Island is about the Maui statues, but this time we're just looking at one. This one in particular is known as Tukaturi, and it stands out among the other Maui statues for one very obvious reason. It's in a completely different position. The Tukaturi Maui is found kneeling with its hands on its legs, whilst the others are standing upright. It's also much smaller, has a rounder head and possibly a beard on its face. The tucuturi was also carved from a different stone that was a reddish color and has a few other differences that people have noted over the years. Archaeologists discovered the tucuturi Maui in 1955 at the Reno Raku Quarry, which is a place where no other statues were found. This begs one question. Why was it left on its own? Was it a famous figure? One legend states that it is a famous Maori sculpture that was sent to watch over future generations. Others believe that the statue may have been based off a chorus singer. This is because the posture seen with the tucuturi had been sued by men and women who were part of a chorus in festivals known as the Rui. Other features, such as the potential facial hair on the statue, resemble that of what a chorus singer would have looked like. When comparing the tucuturi to the other Maori statues, experts have tried to determine which came first. Researchers haven't come across enough evidence yet, but some currently believe that the tucuturi might be from a later time period. With that being said, the most popular belief is that it was the first statue and it was left in the quarry instead of being moved to where the others generally reside, due to possible damage to the statue. Another unusual theory believes that it's connected the Tangata Manu cult of Easter Island, making it the last Maui to have been created. Many critical pieces of the puzzle are still missing, so we'll have to work with the theories we currently have for now. It's definitely interesting to see all that we've uncovered so far, and who knows what information will reveal itself in the future. Easter Island has proven to be a very perplexing and curious place in the world. The mystery man was found deceased near a reservoir on Saddleworth Moor, Greater Manchester, England in December 2015. His body was discovered lying on a track close to the summit of Indian's Head, above the Dovestone Reservoir. The mystery of the unidentified stranger was compelling. He had no ID, no wallet, no mobile phone, and no obvious connection to the area in which he was found. The only clue they could find was that he was a man. Was 3 train tickets in his coat pocket, 130 pounds in 10-pound notes, and a medication box for hypothyroidism treatment. It was treated as non-suspicious by the police and gave rise to numerous theories, with the story spreading globally. Officers said that the mysterious man was last seen near the location where he was found by walkers around 4:30 p.m. the previous day. The tickets found in his pocket suggested that he traveled from London Ealing to Manchester Piccadilly the day before he was discovered. One ticket was from Ealing Broadway train station at 9:04 a.m., and the other was from London Euston to Piccadilly, bought at 9:50 a.m. Pictures of the man were released, but these only showed him at the train station, giving no real insight into the identity of the stranger. The next confirmed sighting of the mystery man was in the Clarence pub in Greenfield, Saddleworth, asking the landlord Melvin Robinson the way to the top of the mountain. He was given the moniker Neil Dovestone as they continued the search for his identity. The mystery deepened as toxicology reports in March 2016 noted that Neil Dovestone passed away from a dose of strychnine, a toxic odorless pesticide used to end the life of rats. This is a favorite in the mystery novels of Agatha Christie and is illegal to buy in the UK. Theories surrounding Neil Dovestone's passing circulated, a favorite being that he was a survivor of a 1949 plane crash near where he was discovered and undertook a pilgrimage to the site. A full 13 months after his body was discovered, Neil Dovestone was officially identified as 67-year-old David Litton. A metal plate in his left thigh was traced back to a procedure in Pakistan was a key clue in discovering his identity, amongst other breadcrumbs that pointed to the country. On the 10th of December 2015, Litton boarded a plane in Lahore and traveled almost 4,000 miles to London Heathrow. Once police identified images at Heathrow and matched Neil Dovestone to passenger records, they were able to trace a relative and get a DNA sample, which led to a positive identification. David Litton had been living in Pakistan for 10 years before returning to the UK and heading to Saddleworth. While the identity of the mysterious body of Neil Dovestone has been unearthed, a mystery still surrounds why he returned to England and went to Saddleworth and how he passed away of pesticide poisoning. One theory suggests that he took it himself, but these will be questions that remain unanswered. The ghost sighting of Officer Carl Romero. In the north of New Mexico, A team of police officers found something blood-curdling on their surveillance tapes. They captured a mysterious phantom-like figure moving across a hallway on video. Officer Carl Romero was on surveillance duty the Saturday it happened. He claims that the alleged apparition was surely a ghost. The video shows a bright white figure walk across the screen during the night, though whatever or whoever this was is uncertain, for the image is blurry. Carl Romero explained that he quickly reported the sighting to higher up, but they didn't find anyone at the place the specter was spotted. Romero stated, "At first I thought it was a fly or moth. Then I saw the legs and the outline was a human, but not a real human. A ghost." According to the other police officers, there's no chance for anyone to get into the building without permission. The gates must be open to allow anyone access inside, and those gates are heavily guarded. Therefore, there is no logical explanation for someone breaking in, at least not without setting off the alarms. A detective that was involved with this strange case claims that he's uncertain whether this was an actual spirit or a criminal trying to break in. The detective has not dismissed the possibility of what Officer Carl Romero saw was an otherworldly entity. Not to mention that other officers have heard unusual sounds in the building's lobby in the past, partnered with sightings they couldn't explain or describe as anything logical. "I do believe in ghosts," Romero stated. Brian Bonner, a paranormal researcher and investigator, has his share of doubts. Brian Bonner works for the Rocky Mountain Paranormal Research Society. "That has to be one of the worst videos that I have seen," Bonner stated, proceeding to point out the flaws with the alleged ghost sighting video. The image appears to have been caused by a small insect crawling on the plastic case that houses the lens. The police, believing it to be something supernatural, spreads the narrative that this is an authentic ghost story. But just because the police believe it to be, doesn't make it credible. Most people jump to the conclusion that if they cannot explain it, it has to be a ghost, when it is very easy to explain.